Okay, we are finding all of the zeros on this one, and when we're finding zeros, we're essentially solving it for x. We're trying to determine when our output, in this case h of x, would equal 0. What would our input be, our x? What would our x values be? So the first thing I'm going to do is change the output to 0. Okay, all I did is I rewrote this one and changed it to a 0 instead of h of x. Okay, so now I'm going to determine, are there any common factors? Is there anything that all three of these share in common that I can maybe factor out of them? And let's see, 1, -4, -45, that doesn't help very much, but I do notice that all three of them have an x. So I'm going to factor out an x now. Alright, now that I've got the x out of there, now I look at this one and say, okay, I've got x to the fourth minus 4x squared minus 45. And this one looks like a complicated one, but we've seen these before, and I know that I can factor this one, and it looks real similar to x squared minus 4x minus 45. So I kind of look at it and say, okay, I need two numbers that multiply together to give me negative 45, but when you add them together will give me negative 4. So you run down your list. Negative 45 would be 5 times 9. Okay, and it's got to be a negative, and when we add them together, my answer is going to be negative, so I know my 9 is going to be negative. So it's got to be a negative 9 and a positive 5. Okay, so I rewrite it now. Here's my negative 9 and my positive 5. Okay? And these are my factors now. Instead of being just plain x plus 5 and x minus 9, this one was raised to the 4th power, so both of these two are going to have to be squared. Okay, so now that I've got this all factored, I look and see, is there any other things here that I can factor out? And I go, okay, x squared minus 9, I know that that one can be factored even further, because x squared minus 9 is the same thing as x plus 3 times x minus 3. So here are my factors there. Okay, now I look here and I go, x squared plus 5, that can't be factored any further, not that I'm aware of anyway. So let's kind of look at that one for a moment here. I'd like to break that one off. Okay, so we go x squared plus 5, and I'm going to set all of these equal to 0, but this will be the first one that I do. Okay, x squared plus 5. So now what I'm going to do is move my get my x squared all by itself. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. That's going to give me negative 5 is equal to x squared. Now to get rid of this squared, I'm going to square root both sides. That's going to give me this plus or minus the square root of negative 5 is equal to x. Well, we know we can't have this negative underneath the square root sign, so that's actually going to yield me an imaginary number, a complex number. So it would look like plus or minus I square root of 5. So that gives me one of my answers. Okay, but now I still have all of these other ones. I've got x minus 3, x plus 3, and I've still got x over here. We'll deal with this x later. It's an easy one, so we'll kind of tackle it last, if you will. So now I've got an x minus 3 and an x plus 3. I'm going to set both of these two equations up equal to 0. There's my x minus 3 and my x plus 3. Okay, now I'm just going to solve both of them. I'm going to move the 3's over on each side. This one was a minus 3, so I add 3 to both sides. This one was a plus 3, so I'm going to subtract 3 to both sides. Okay, that gives me an answer of x equals positive 3 and x equals negative 3. So now I've got 4 of my 5 answers. I've got x equals 3, negative 3, I've got a positive I square root of 5, and a negative I square root of 5. I've got this last one here, that my final x that's been hanging out over there. And that one's an easy one because it's just x equals 0, okay? So I got that one. From right here, x equals 0, okay? Alright, now I just got to combine them all together. I've got an x equals 0 and x equals plus or minus I square root of 5, x equals 3, and an x equals negative 3. So I'll just write it like that, 0 plus or minus I square root of 5 and plus or minus 3. And that will work just fine.